Hello, folks, and welcome back to another episode of Generation Red, the kettle corn of Husker Fan Podcast, where we try to be sweet, but at times we get salty. I am your host, Ken.
And hello, folks. I am your host, Scott.
And we are here with our buddies from the Husker Cuzcast. This is a Herd at Sports crossover podcast, if you will. We are both of our shows are proud members of the Herd at Sports Network. We appreciate all that they do for us. And it's been a fun partnership with those guys. But we're here with Husker Cuzcast. We are going to reveal the results of the 2023 over-under game. But before we do that, I've been in Arizona with family. As you can see, I'm not in my studio, hanging out in Arizona. My mom and dad are celebrating their 60th anniversary on December 6th. If they happen to watch this or listening to the podcast later, happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. Love you very much. So we're down here hanging out until tomorrow. We need to leave to head back to Nebraska, but this Airbnb is pretty nice. It's got a pool outside the window. I had threatened Justin earlier yesterday that maybe I'd do the show from the pool, and I didn't bring swim trunks, so that might have been awkward for everybody viewing. But I don't know. I haven't paid attention to any of the news that may have broke earlier today. Tyler, I think you might have an opinion on some of that news. What was it?
Well, the college football committee has officially come out with the final four for the playoffs, and the four teams are going to be Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Alabama. And oh my gosh, I am furious with this decision. So I could point to all the reasons why they got in, and I think we all know it's about ratings. It's about money. There is no justified reason. But when you talk about Alabama this year, like there are years where I understand some SEC bias. The SEC traditionally has been the best conference over the last 6, 7, 8 years. They're not this year. They're not the best conference this year. Pac-12 is better. Big Ten is better. So this is not a dominant SEC team. Or SEC conference. And then you look at what Alabama did. Not only did they lose their one meaningful non-conference game, they barely beat Auburn. And yes, they had an impressive victory against Georgia, who is also in the SEC. It's just a counter argument. And then you have Florida State. And the argument that the committee says is because of the quarterback injury is why they're not in. And I do not believe for 1 second if Alabama's quarterback was injured and they were undefeated, they would be left out. Georgia, same thing. I mean, you could argue some other teams in that scenario. This is bullshit. This is bullshit.
I agree. I think it's ridiculous that Alabama, like, I understand years past. Like, let's say there's an Alabama team that's 11-1 going into their championship game and they win, but they win all of their games in the regular season convincingly and maybe drop a game off against a good LSU team or when Florida's or Auburn's are doing better, they lose against them. Like, I totally understand that, but they barely beat South Florida. They had a really, really hard time against a downtrodden Texas A&M, played close against a Arkansas team. I mean, you can just go down the list. They just have had a really, really lackluster season. They aren't the Alabamas that we remember of the past. They're definitely one of the least impressive Alabama teams that I've seen in recent history. And they just get in simply because of SEC bias. I know that it's such a normative term, the SEC bias, blah, 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 it ruffles feathers, all that shit. But seriously, like, there's no reason to leave an undefeated team that wins their conference championship out, like Power 5 team. Like, you don't leave an undefeated Power 5 team out of the college football playoff for a team that lost a regular season game against a non-conference opponent. Like, that's inexcusable. I don't care. Like, when I'm looking at the eye test, yeah, Florida State doesn't look that great without Jordan Travis as their starting quarterback. And they're at their third string quarterback now, true freshman, 18-year-old kid. That's still inexcusable. I mean, I know you can play the mental gymnastics if you want, but freaking quit pulling a hamstring trying to suck the dick of the SEC. Like, it's just beyond frustrating at this point. Like, I knew this was going to happen. I knew it after last night or really just leading up to the conference championship weekend, if the cards fell the way that they actually did, I was like, there's a very, very high likelihood that Alabama squeezes in over Florida State if a few teams lose ahead of them. And that's exactly what happened. And it's just like, I fucking knew it. Sorry about all my language, but I'm pissed. Like, I wanted to see I wanted to see an SEC-less college football playoff. That would have just been so cool. I just feel so bad. What else can Florida State do? What are they supposed to do? Like, you just proved that even with a third string quarterback, you can still go out and play a very, very ugly game. Dude, I was watching that ACC championship, and the fact that Florida State, I don't know if you guys watched this, but like there was like a botched punt. They are inside of the red zone, Louisville, and that Florida State defense, which has been pretty damn good this year, really shows up in an outstanding way. I think that drive ended with an interception in the end zone. Like, and then they just did not allow Jeff Brom and company to do anything. And it's like, it's a like at anything, you have to let them in with that outstanding defensive performance alone. Like, you are just spitting and giving the dick to their defensive performance. And it's just so whatever.
Who else has a strong opinion? Go ahead.
I'll say this. This is just another excuse for this committee. And I know the committee is not the same every year, but it started off with, we can't let a Big 12 team in because they don't have a conference champion because we have co-champions here. And then the following year, the championship game don't mean shit. We'll put both Alabama and Georgia in it. Even though one of them lost the game, we'll just put them both in there. It's just another long list of excuses that they come up with every single year to keep the SEC going strong. It is bullshit. But let me tell you this. Michigan, you better not fuck up and lose this game. To make it look Alabama long in the playoff, you were going to be the laughing stock of college football right now.
Because, I mean, I honestly would not be surprised if Alabama wins it all. I mean,
oh, sure.
If they beat
it would remind me a lot of 2014.
It would be the Ohio State of 2014.
Ohio State of 2014
got in.
Yep, for sure. Justin, what do you think?
I just wanted to see chaos. That's all I wanted to see. I wanted to see SEC left out of the playoff. I wanted to see, you see chaos right now. But there's no I-in team unless the playoff committee is selecting teams right now. That's what it is. It's crazy.
Yeah. Do you guys, just a hypothetical question, do you guys think Florida State's in if Jordan Travis doesn't get hurt?
Of course.
Sure. Absolutely.
See, I can see a scenario where they'd still leave him out.
Yeah,
Because it's Florida State, because it's the ACC, and the ACC is an absolute trash conference compared to the other four.
So let me ask you this: do you think a Clemson team like Trevor Lawrence gets hurt on? Do you think they get left out of the playoff?
Probably not, because they have a track record. They have a track record in the playoff.
So it's all name recognition still. Like we're admitting,
but Florida State has the name.
Not in the last 15 years.
I mean, they have a national championship in the last 15 years. I mean, we all forget about the
12. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Jameis Winston and company. Yeah.
You guys say if Jordan Travis doesn't get hurt, I don't know what, Scott, you mentioned pulling a hamstring. I still think somebody gets left out, so Alabama gets in. Maybe they redo the order and Texas gets left out. Like I just think I think Florida State was the easiest because of the injury to leave them out. I think if Jordan Travis wasn't injured, they would have just flipped the script and left Texas out of the equation and said, well, the SEC is a better conference than the Big 12. Or the losses, I think Texas had wasn't as bad. I think they just would have found if Texas season.
I've been arguing this all week at work. I mean, this was a guaranteed situation that an SEC team would find a way in.
Yes.
It was guaranteed. There was no way this committee was going to go, let's just leave all the SEC out of this playoff.
Which it would
no way they were going to
better. And I will say this: if Georgia would have won that game, I would be sitting here today saying Texas should have been left out. Like undefeated Florida State, the fact that they're the ones to get dropped is the shocking thing in this equation. And I think it's because Jordan Travis is injured and it was an easy sell job. Like, oh, well, they're not.
I guess you're right, Todd. That's the piss poor thing of the whole thing is you got 2 1-loss teams in the playoff and the undefeated team gets left out.
Power 5.
Power 5.
It's one thing for them to get jumped by 1-1-loss team, but to get jumped by 2 1-loss teams.
And this wasn't a Florida State team. They have the name brand. They in the non-conference beat 2 SEC teams. Like, so it's not like you could point to, well, they played a week out of conference. No, they played a good out of conference schedule.
Well, and then consider this. What if Georgia goes to their bowl game, whatever bowl game they go to, Sugar Bowl, or whatever the non-BCS or playoff bowl game is, they go to their bowl game and they lose to some shit stick team from somewhere. And then the narrative is going to be, well, they didn't want to be there. They wanted to be in the playoff. A lot of their players didn't play because they're in a crap bowl and this, that, and the other. It's just the same narrative. And it kind of goes along with what this. I don't agree with Justin at all because he disagrees with us. So screw that guy. But no, he says, I'm sorry, Justin. I think no one wanted to see a repeat of last year where TCU, who beat Michigan, by the way, gets throttled by an SEC team. FSU is deserving, but not better team than the top 4. As far as
you can't get throttled, you can't get throttled by an SEC team if there's none in the college football playoff.
Exactly, it would have been a
Sorry
way more.
I cut you off from that punch.
No. You're dead on. I was going to say that, but that was a perfect way to put it because I think, and I was thinking of this when Tyler was first talking. This playoff would have had probably way more eyeballs on it if there wasn't an SEC team in it. I will go to my grave saying that you would add way more eyeballs because the whole of college football would be like, thank the good Lord above, we get to actually watch an actual playoff of teams that deserve to be there. I don't give a damn if it's the best 4 because that's a subjective argument. Guess what Florida State proved? They proved they were absolutely the best team in the ACC, and they have a 0 in the loss column. Justin, I don't agree with you. Not you, Justin, the one that's comment dummy. I don't agree with you. I think Florida State should have been there. Whether it was
we could all disagree with Justin. This Justin over here too, because
it's like 2 birds with 1 stone.
I've said like 6 words so far, Derek. Okay,
I know, and somehow I will disagree with you. At some point in this show, I will disagree with you. It's almost guaranteed.
What my last comment on this is that, like, all that to be said, I don't know if I agree with you on the eyeballs. The SEC has a lot of reach in college football, but put all of that to the side. Like, if you are just going to say, we know on paper who are the best 4 teams, let's get rid of the playoff altogether. Let's go back to the day when you just start making up and crowning national titles. Because, like, if it's all subjective and we don't want to settle it on the field, then what the hell are we doing here? So,
luckily, we'll never have to worry about it again because next year we can start a 12-team playoff like it should have been from the get-go.
They should have done that executive.
We won't have this argument anymore.
This year would have been a really, really fun playoff.
Or this would have been a really good year to have just a 2-team championship because we know who the 2 best teams on paper are, Washington and Michigan. Like, they're the 2 most deserving teams all year. They deserve to be in the national championship.
I would not be surprised, though, if it comes down between Texas and Alabama as a rematch. I would not be surprised because Michigan's going to find a way to lose this game. I have no doubt in my mind that they find a way to lose this game. And I think that Texas finds a way to beat Washington. I just have this gut feeling it's going to be a rematch between Texas and Alabama. Alabama will come out on top, and then there's going to be just all the talking heads saying, "See, this is why Florida State was left out." And then we're all going to look like a bunch of, and like just a bunch of incompetent dummies. But it's like I still didn't want to see them in there anyway.
That's why we all have to hope for a Florida State Georgia
bowl game.
Oh, that'd be great. And watch Florida State win it. And then still, like Dad said, I think he makes the perfect observation that it doesn't matter if Georgia wins, they're gonna be like, see, Georgia should have been put in, and then if Georgia loses, they go, oh, see, look,
they didn't want to be
there. Florida
It's the same crap you heard back in the day whenever Alabama didn't make it to the national championship game, but then they'd go to another bowl game and they'd get whooped up on like somebody like Oklahoma. And then you'd hear, well, they really didn't want to be there. Or when UCF, I know it's a sore subject, in 2017 beats Auburn in a bowl game.
Auburn
and the excuse was, well, Auburn didn't really want to be there. It's like
anybody who watched that game knows that's bullshit because
exactly. They played their guts out. Both teams did.
Both teams played really well in that game.
So anyway, so that was fun. We've solved the college football playoffs problem. Problem is we still have an SEC team in there, and that sucks. Anyway, let's talk about the other big news that happened over the last couple of days, and that was the fact that everybody was worried that Tony White was going to go to where was he going to go?
He was going to go to the Big Ten.
He was going to go to the Big Ten, wasn't he? It's just the wrong Big Ten team. He was going to go possibly to USC to run a defense for Lincoln Riley, who apparently doesn't understand what defense means. But instead, Nebraska ponied up some money. What was he making before? He was making like a cool $1 million a year, wasn't he? Wasn't his salary just a straight up $1 million or really close to it?
I thought I read he was making right at $1 million.
So we got him up. He's making more money than the guy that engineered one of the worst offenses in the country. Thank God. So there you go. That's what his 2023 defense is, with just the numbers I pulled up from the article I read on his new contract restructuring. He was 14th nationally in total defense, 303.5 yards per game. Best total defense ranking since 2009 and first top 25 defense since 2010. Granted, there's a caveat. You can't really necessarily put an asterisk on it, but you can look at it and say this was like the worst Big Ten West offensively that we have seen in quite a while. And we got lucky catching some teams that got pretty good on offense later in the season, like Northwestern and Purdue, who tended to play a little bit better toward the end of the season. So is that because White is really good at his job, but did we catch him early? I don't know, but I do know he deserves a little bit more money because I think we need to see what he can do when he's got some guys with some experience in his system. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the total defense. Then it was 8th nationally in rush defense, which I thought was pretty incredible. 92.9 yards per game. Somebody have something?
Yeah, I can. I just want to go back to the top 25 because we've been doing this, our podcast, for 8 years. And Tyler, every year he says that Nebraska is going to have a top 25 defense. He finally nailed it this year.
I told you guys.
And the funny thing is, I think this year it was the first year he was actually like, I don't know if I have quite a top 25.
Maybe
no, that's not bad.
No, he said top 25. I can go back to the tape.
I could have swore he said he wasn't going.
He said you said they were going to be just in the top 20. If I remember, you were like,
this will be a top 25
just
defense,
in, like probably 24th ranked or something like that.
I want to point out something that's very remarkable about this statistic right here, because the all Big Conference players were named on defense, and only Luke Reimer was the third team all Big Ten.
Everybody else was
he did a top 25 defense without any single player taking over like huge accolades in the conference.
Well, some of that was bullshit too. I mean,
I think that's BS as well. I think Gefford should.
Let me ask you: do you honestly believe that Luke Reimer was our best defender in this particular season?
I think it's arguable between him and
statistically, he had a little bit of a
statistically. I think it was Gifford.
Yeah, I think it was
had
Gifford.
The most tackles, and then I would argue for Nash or even Ty to be third team as well. But
yeah,
and those guys were honorable mentions.
Yep.
I mean, it's
just crazy to me that I would have said Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher were probably our best defenders. Truthfully, that's guys I probably would have picked. And for them to not get in there when Reimer did, it was like kind of crazy to me.
Do you think hypothetical, once again, we're just going to go on the hypothetical train. If we would have gotten to 6 wins, do you think that it completely flips the script and we get a lot of second teamers and hell, even maybe first teamers?
No, I don't.
I think if you get to 7 or 8 wins, you could make a case for that. But 6 wins, I think, gets you at least 2 more guys on the third team. I think you're going to a bowl game.
I think what also hurt
guys on third team.
I think what also hurt this team was the last 3 games giving up over 100 yards each game, rushing.
Rushing, yeah.
I mean, you gave 163 to Iowa, who wasn't able to run the ball on anybody.
Well, that kind of ties into the next national ranking at 8th nationally in rush defense at 92.9 yards per game. It's our best run defense since 1999. That one kind of surprised me, and I went back and looked, and it's true. It's our best run defense since 1999. I'd have figured 2009 might have been a little bit better. And they held 8 of 12 opponents to less than 100 yards. So, what was that? Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, and who was it that ran for 100 on us? Besides that, was it maybe Purdue? I don't think it was Purdue, but I think it was a Big Ten team. But yeah, Michigan. Yep. Michigan,
Wisconsin, Iowa, Maryland.
That's right. That's right. They got over 100 yards in that last drive in the fourth quarter. So that's pretty impressive. And then the other thing that they had mentioned was 17th nationally in scoring defense at 18.3 points per game. It was Nebraska's best scoring defense since 2010, held 8 of 12 opponents to 14 or fewer points. That, in today's day and age of college football where you're paying coordinators $1 million or more, I think it absolutely is deserving of that 1.6. And we get to keep them at least another year, if not 2. So I think it's awesome. I'm glad they did it. So
yep. I'm happy that they retained him. I thought they were. I know everybody was pretty worrisome about it. I think it's just Husker fans being like, we can't have nice things.
We can't have good things.
I really thought, if Tony White was a defensive coordinator worth his salt, it's like, that this isn't you caught lightning in a bottle. This is you being a good defensive coordinator, and it's only going to get better. I mean, the amount of youth that we have on this defense is going to pay dividends in the next 2 or 3 years. And I think if Tony White does want to leave, I think he's going to leave not laterally and go, become a DC.
He'll get a head coach gig.
He'll get a head coaching gig somewhere. Or hell, I hope he plays a game of Charlie McBride-ism and just stays here forever if he continues to generate
cool.
top 25 defenses. Please do that. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that, guys?
Well, I think the amount of pay raise they gave him is kind of interesting because I mean, at this point, you guys talked about USC, and I don't know if that was actually ever real. What I do believe was real is that he was interviewing for San Diego State head coaching job, and the fact that they ponied up to get him the $1.6 million from just a pure pay standpoint makes it really hard to think where is he going to go? Because there isn't many Group of 5 jobs paying that much. I think San Diego State, who they're playing Sean Lewis, $1.7 million. So they're basically, the amount of money they gave it is big. The second thing is over the life of Nebraska, there is, fans have sometimes said we do not pay our coaches the way they should. And we can argue, and we'll probably, I think, get in a little bit here about Marcus Satterfield. Is he overpaid? Yes, no, whatever. But the fact that we're paying $3 million for both of our coordinators is a big deal. The only team that's paying more, I believe I got this right, is Ohio State. We're paying more than Michigan. Yeah. We're paying more than USC. We're paying more than any other team in the Big Ten for coordinators now. And that's a big deal. So I think it's a good move. Obviously, we all are in agreement that keeping Tony White is a huge deal for this team. But I think the way that they did it, because they could have kept him, probably give him a couple $100,000 more, and that probably would have been enough to keep him. But they made a statement with this play.
Yeah. They gave him basically another coordinator's base salary on top of a really high base salary. Because if you're an offensive coordinator at a TCU, or if you're an offensive coordinator at like a Wake Forest, you're making $400K, $300K, something like that. So, and then you got to add to the fact that, I don't know the tax brackets of every single state, but I guarantee you would have to make 1.2 million in California to break even with the 1.6 million he's making here. So I don't know if USC was ever going to fork that cash out, but no, I think it's a good sign of our athletic department moving with the times, that it's like we need to set a precedent, because there's just so much money in college sports now. So it's like you gotta get with the times, and maybe set a precedent. And I think that's what they're doing. Or maybe they're just panicking and hitting the panic button, like, throw money at him, we got to keep him. Who knows? I don't know.
Well, I'm glad they did. No doubt about it. I'm glad they did. Anybody else have anything on Tony White before we move on to a quick question before we start the over-under game results?
Negative.
All right. So I have a quick question for you guys. Most valuable coach, excluding Coach Rule and both coordinators, who was Nebraska's most valuable coach on the staff in 2023? I'll answer real quick. I will say it's Terrence Knighton. End of story. That defensive line, Nash, but I was torn. I really wanted to say Corey. Good Lord,
Campbell.
Crawford. What Campbell? Corey Campbell. Just because Nash Hutmarker was almost invisible on this team for the last couple of years, and then this year suddenly he's absolutely blowing people up. So I was torn between Corey Campbell and Terrence Knighton, but I think Pot Roast was by far the most valuable coach on this staff.
I'm guessing we're going to be unanimous here because I agree. Terrence Knighton, the job that he did with those young defensive linemen, he just, I think for the most part, a lot of people thought that the defensive line was not going to be one of the strengths of the team with everybody that we've lost, but they really were one of the high points of the team. So yeah, he did an excellent job.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
I agree.
I'll say this. I agree with you, Justin. I agree with you guys. It's Terrence Knighton, but don't forget Rob Dvorak in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like the linebackers were pretty damn good too.
Yeah, they were,
and it was pretty impressive with what he did with those guys too. The defensive line was, to me, more impressive. So I would say Terrence Knighton as well, but Dvorak deserves at least a little bit of credit here too.
There's a lot more young guys on the defensive line, Derek. I mean,
that's fair.
At linebacker, he was dealing with some, senior people, senior guys.
I understand. Again, I agree with you. I just think he deserves a little bit of praise too, I guess.
Sure. They were good.
Mm-hmm. All right. Tyler, you have an opinion?
I mean, there's nothing. I think the guys that Derek and Justin mentioned are probably the top two. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think the whole defensive staff was great. But I think Knighton is the guy.
It wasn't an offensive coach. We can all agree on that for sure, right?
So
no,
I like
it wasn't.
I like Terrence Knighton and I like Robbie. I think one of them that was really overshadowed by the lack of performance on our offense was Donovan Raiola's improvement of our offensive line. Sure. I don't want to say he's the most valuable, but I want to give him an honorable mention because I was watching that offensive line all season because I really wanted to find an excuse as to why our offense was so abysmal. And I couldn't ever find anything on our offensive line that made me go, you are an Achilles heel to our quarterback play. Is like, no, they were actually holding pockets. Our guys weren't staying in them. And I think there were tons of running lanes that just Anthony Grant wasn't going into. And I think that was the separator between Grant and Emmett Johnson, was that Johnson was actually finding those holes and cutting to them. Now, they might have not been designed or anything like that half the time, but I think that our offensive line actually made an improvement. And I think that I just want to say that Rule making a gamble with Donovan Raiola, I think, is paying off. And if we can make this kind of an improvement next year, again, like kind of a sizable improvement, and God willing that our offensive coordinator actually plays with it and coaches whoever our quarterback's coach is going to be this year, I really think our offensive line is making a step in the right direction. And I think that gamble that Matt Rule made is actually paying off. But that's just my honorable mention. I really want to give credit to Donovan Raiola and what he's done with this offensive line this year.
Hey, Scott, I got a question for you. So last week we did our position group grades for our 2023 season reaction episode. How would you grade the offensive line for this year? What grade would you give?
I'd give it like a C+.
C+?
That would be my response too. Yeah.
Yeah. There were some things that were good. There were some things that were not good. There were some procedural errors. And I mean, there was a lot of false starts on our offense. Well, not as many as I remember in years past. There were some things that were concerning, but I would have given them a D- last year. And so they improved. What did you guys, because I hadn't watched that episode, what did you guys rate the offensive line?
So Tyler gave the best grade for the offensive line at C. I gave D+, and Derrick gave D.
Okay.
You know, if you would have asked me that question earlier in the season, it would have easily been giving him like a C+ or even a B- grade. But it was those last couple of games when you saw some more procedural stuff when the pressure was kind of on, that the offensive line wasn't quite as good, especially against Iowa. But yeah, I think C+ to C+ is a pretty fair grade that I would give this offensive line for this year. So anyway, that's pretty cool. Let's move on to the over-under game results. You guys ready to have some fun?
Yeah.
The offense is interesting.
Yeah. Come on. This year did not go how everybody thought, right? Especially on offense.
Not even close.
Nobody saw this coming.
The defense was surprisingly accurate. We were surprisingly accurate on the defense. So there you go. Scoring offense. The over-under we set was 27.5 points per game, which would have been
no one took over, right? No one took this over.
No, we didn't. None of us took it over. Which would have been 5th in the Big Ten and 66th in the NCAA this year if that over would have hit, or if that number would have hit. The actual scoring was 18 points per game, which was 12th in the Big Ten, 124th in the NCAA. And incidentally enough, tied with the team that just got blanked in the Big Ten championship game yesterday, the name which will not be spoken. So there we go. We all took the under, and Derrick got closest at 23. So
wow.
My 6.9 did not pay off.
It did not. Derrick, I think you were probably mocked at the time for being like a pessimist.
I'm sure I was.
There's a pretty good chance.
We apologize to you on that one.
I do.
You were
I was
dead
busy
right
building
there.
my beer pyramid. I didn't care what you said.
I remember that now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's
The pyramid.
the pyramid was happening.
That was a
particular
really good
moment.
pyramid, guys.
That was
Yeah,
really
that was
good.
a lot of fun.
Very
That was a lot
good
of
impromptu creative decision on our part.
Oh man. Let's talk about that for a second. The fact that we've gone from all 5 of us sitting in one studio in one state to all 5 of us being in 3 different states, thousands of miles apart. The beauty of technology and the ability to do this is just the coolest thing. So thank you, StreamYard, for being as good as you are. Anyway,
thank you, Ken, for being as good as you are with using StreamYard.
You're so sweet.
Hey.
He set the precedent, man. My dad did. I mean, Herd at Media, just after the Go Big Red cast, kind of took notes from my dad. Then it was like, oh, I guess Hill Varsity is going to start using it now. And now it's just the thing. It's the thing. Dad set the precedent.
What can I say?
Trendsetter.
I'm a trendsetter. Now, if I could just get the trend of listeners and viewers too, that would be kind of cool. So passing yards over under, we set it at 2,700. Holy cow, how far off were we? That would have been 3rd in the Big Ten this year and 64th in the NCAA. The actual was, God almighty, was that abysmal? 1,631. You know, when you had a tight end starting at quarterback for most of the year, that tends to happen, I would think, which is 13th in the Big Ten, 129th in the NCAA. And the results of that category were, there you go. Tyler was the most pessimistic in this category, so he won it at 2,276 yards. Me, I think I was the one that was furthest off.
The closest person was still over 600 yards off.
And I was called. The funny thing is, I was called the Jeff Sims hater before the season started.
Yeah.
You were the Jeff Sims realist there, buddy.
Yeah, you weren't. It can't be hate if it's true.
I was a Jeff Sims apologist going in. I was like, I really think he's got a lot of upside. I think there's a lot more to him than blah. But I also wasn't aware of how bad our quarterbacks coaching was going to be across the board. So
no kidding.
So I have definitely followed your guys's like get rid of Satterfield. Can I at least tell you? Didn't you think Chubba Purdy took a pretty big step forward this year?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I said that I think on our last show that I will give Satterfield credit in the fact that Chubba Purdy certainly came in and looked like the guy that was most prepared to run his offense. Kudos to Sat for making that happen.
And is it like, I just feel like you guys have like placed the whole blame, like no blame goes to Matt Rule. No blame goes to, it seems like, any of the other offensive coaches. It's the Marcus Satterfield, like, disaster with you guys.
Yep. Hey, my biggest thing is turnovers more than anything when it comes to Sat.
So Matt Rule doesn't
necessarily his offense. No, well, Matt Rule owns the fact that he hired the guy in the first place because he was one of the worst offenses when it came to turning the football over when they were at South Carolina. They were 116th in the country in turnovers lost the last 2 years he was at South Carolina. So, yeah, Matt Rule absolutely owns that.
But
he should have
Matt
seen
Rule,
it.
when they were at Temple, they were turnover. They had a lot of when they were together at Temple, turnovers were an issue.
Sure.
I mean,
I think you can blame Matt Rule to a degree, but this is my philosophy. My philosophy is individual accountability. That it's like you can go and blame a CEO all you want for one subsidiary of a business falling apart in a very, very short period of time, but ultimately it's the person who's in charge of whatever department is falling apart. It's on them. And it's like, yes, you can blame the CEO for hiring the person and making that a dumpster fire area of a business. But ultimately, the person responsible is the person responsible for it. And yes, you can blame the CEO. You can. But when the CEO makes good hires in all the other departments, it's like, well, is it really the CEO's fault, or was it just human nature kind of coming into play and him making a mistake? Like, I don't think this was like a blatant, like purposeful, corrupt hire from Matt Rule. And so everything about Matt Rule needs to come into question. I guess we weren't really like dogging on Matt Rule because, I mean, I just get so sick of it. I get so sick of like, well, everything is on the head coach. It's like, to a degree, I think some fault needs to be divvied out to a head coach for anything that his assistant coaches do. But ultimately, it does still just fall on the assistant coach. Now, when it comes to certain contexts, I think that like when you look at a Jim Harbaugh and a Connor Stallions type thing, like, does that fall on Connor Stallions or does that fall on the head coach? Well, of course it falls on the head coach because he's the one who is directing such a corrupt establishment type of systemic problem. But like when it comes to Satterfield, I mean, do we really expect Matt Rule to just suddenly take over executive play calling orders and him abdicating his responsibility as a head coach entirely just so that he can micromanage one area that's clearly falling apart around him? Like, absolutely not. You don't want somebody to burden such a huge responsibility on a game-to-game basis. But yeah, I think you're right though. It ultimately falls on Matt Rule for making that hire in the first place. So I think I think two things are true at once. Yes, it's Matt Rule's fault, but and it's
not even Matt Rule. I just don't even I just feel like a lot could be said is they whiffed on the quarterback room. And I think that the quarterbacks that we had seen at Nebraska the year before, I think Harburg and Purdy both took steps forward. So I don't know if you could say it's Satterfield not being able to develop guys. I think it's too early to tell that. And I think it's too hard to tell scheme-wise when you have – I just think when you whiff on Jeff Sims the way you did, it's just – not to put it all on him, but you whiffed so hard out of that room. And I think there's a lot of other position groups that did not develop the way we needed to. Wide receivers maybe being namely one of them. Tight ends did not develop the way we wanted them to.
Wide receivers saw a lot of attrition as well. So – you know, you got a young kid coaching a bunch of young kids that he wasn't expecting to coach in game situations near as often as he had to. So I'm willing to give a little bit of a pass. I'm also willing to say, you know, I was on the fire Sat train, and I'll be
hashtag every game. I saw a hashtag.
I will gladly admit 9 times out of 10 I was purely out of emotion. But I also think that if you're going to be making $1.4 million to coordinate an offense, and like Scott has said on our show, you should be able to figure out what to do with guys, even after some people get injured. If your defensive coordinator is running a top 25 defense and you've got a bottom 25 offense to complement it, and offensive coordinators making more money, it just seems to me there should be some accountability for that. But we could do this all day and we'll never get done with this. So
yeah, we would have to have a whole other episode collaboration with you guys.
We could do that. We could do that down the road.
Really dig in.
Passing touchdowns. We had set the over-under at 20, which would have been 6 in the Big Ten, 66 nationally, and it ended up being 10. Good heavens. 12th in the Big Ten, 120th in the NCAA, which tied with Rutgers, by the way, for the Big Ten. So, joy.
Hey, those numbers would be higher if it wasn't for all the interceptions in the end zone.
In the end zone. There would have been, 13 completions in the end zone then? Yeah. But there we go. Derrick won this one as well. He called it. He said 13.
Attaboy, Derrick.
Good job, dude. Pessimism. So Derrick takes the lead.
I'm not loving being right on any of these, to be honest with you.
Well,
I would have loved if you were right. I would have loved if you were right on the money. If you were right, oh, buddy, we would be bowling right now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We would have been for sure. Rushing yards, we set the over-under at 2,250, which at the time, if I recall, we had quite a debate in the studio about whether or not that was going to be a number that's even realistic. Would be pretty good. 2,250 would have been first in the Big Ten, 25th in the country, and son of a gun if we weren't second in the Big Ten at 21-22. We only missed out by 128 yards of hitting that number and ended up 47th in the country. And let's see who ended up. Hey, looky there.
Look at you.
You were right. You're glad you were right about this one, though, right, Derrick?
Yeah.
I am pissed because I remember this one being one where I was like, is it 21-69 or 22-69? And I went with the over on that one. And I would have had it very, very
you would have won this
comfortably.
Everybody went over except Derrick on that. Interesting.
And he just went, he went barely under. Yep. Okay. Excuse me. Rush TDs. Yeah. We set the over-under at 25 because we thought that there'd be a few more rushing touchdowns due to the fact that we'd heard there was going to be an emphasis on the run game, which there was. That would have been third in the Big Ten, 31st in the NCAA for this season. We actually had 16 rushing touchdowns, which was 8th in the Big Ten and 84th in the NCAA. My God, our red zone conversion rate was god-awful if we only scored 16 times running the football. So a few of those were long runs, if I remember correctly. And I actually won this one. Everybody went way over, and I was a little – Scott.
I forgot my meme.
Scott was 69. So there we go. So at this point, Derrick has 3, and Tyler and I are tied at 1. Field goal percentage was the last offensive category. We said 80%, which would have been 3rd in the Big Ten, 39th in the country, and it was actually 60%, which was not even last in the Big Ten.
If I remember, I might have been the only one that went under on this.
You could have. I don't remember for sure. 118th in the NCAA, and no. You did go under, but Scott went 75.69. So that 69 is always there.
And I do remember saying, I was like, we're going to have a freshman kicker. He's going to have a real bad time, but not that.
Nobody thought Alvano would be as bad as he was this year, right?
Yeah. And I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure at this point that he had named Alvano the starter. So we were kind of going on whether Bleak Road or Alvano was the starter, so we really weren't sure.
He didn't because he didn't name it until the first game.
Yeah.
Like game time was when I think he finally announced it.
So Bleak Road, he retires from football, right? So was he injured throughout the season? Is that why we never saw Bleak Road?
I would wonder. I would imagine because we didn't seem to have a problem with switching guys out when needed. And you would have thought at a certain point, you would just let Alvano kind of like collect himself and you put Bleak Road in there, but it never happened. So I wonder if he was. I haven't heard anything about it.
The only time you saw him was on his fake field goal run,
right,
which was pretty darn good.
He didn't look hurt there.
No.
Mm-hmm.
No. So I don't know. Maybe it was just
maybe he got hurt on that play.
Maybe. Maybe. Everybody else got hurt. Why not?
Yep, man. If the turf monster doesn't grab his cleat either, he would have been the only kicker to score a touchdown in a game in quite a long time. So, in fact, I think it might have been since Chris Brown happened to catch an oopsie pass because somebody bobbled the snap, so he just ran to the front corner of the end zone. I think that was in '95, and he caught it, and it wasn't a touchdown; it was a 2-point conversion, but still. Anyway, defense, which was the surprising thing for this year, we had set the over/under at 23.5 points per game. That would have been 9th in the Big Ten, but 50th in the NCAA this year, and we actually were 18.3 points per game, which was 5th in the Big Ten, 17th in the country. And Tyler came in. He was the guy that said it was going to be that top 25 defense. So he was big on it. And at 20.5 points,
I just didn't give him enough credit. I will
Nope.
never make that mistake again. All in on these.
There we go. Top 15 defense from here on out.
That's right. Top 15,
10 points
Charlie
a game.
McBride. Yeah, it'll be a defense to make McBride proud. So we gave up 2,563 yards, or set the over-under at 2,563 for passing. 10th would have been 10th in the Big Ten this year and 47th in the NCAA. The actual passing yards were 2,527. Talk about close. Ended up being 9th in the Big Ten and 41st in the NCAA. And who got this one? Looky there. Derrick. With the big 2569, you preempted Scott on this. I remember that very clearly. You preempted Scott, and
you ruined him. I would have said that number too.
So, but Scott still did end up with a 6 and a 9 in his number. So
I figured out a way.
How much did Derrick beat me by?
On this
was
one,
like, yeah, it was close. I mean,
it was close, but I was
went
closer.
over. Shouldn't it be Price is Right? Like,
yeah. He was over by a little bit more than you were under. So I did the math, and it was like 2 or 3 points or something like that. So, thanks, Kool-Aid Man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it does. Those little things in the back. Oh, Nebraska can suck my dick.
Passing touchdowns. We set the number at 18, which would have been 9th in the Big Ten and 61st in the NCAA. The actual number was 14. 5th in the Big Ten, 20th in the NCAA, and the winner, Tyler again. So Derrick's got 4. Nailed it. Absolutely. Grabbed a hammer and he nailed it. So
I get bonus points for that, right?
No. No, you just
I feel like we should.
You get an extra high five, maybe. Maybe. Rushing yards, we put 2,046, which would have been 14th in the Big Ten and 103rd in the NCAA. Didn't have a lot of confidence. I set that number because I thought 3-3-5 defense, maybe we're going to have struggle against the run to start the year and give up some yards. But other than 4 teams, we never gave up over 100 yards to anybody. So the actual number was 1,115, 3rd in the Big Ten, 9th in the country. And the winner was Tyler, 1,715. You really believed in this defense, Ty. No doubt about it.
I was way off on this because I had no faith in that defensive line, as young as they were. And wow.
Remember that. Because this would have been when you were almost all the way through your backpack. And so at this point, I think I'd said something that made you cry. This would have been around that time. I don't even remember what I said, but you were dying.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'll have to I don't know what the hell you were talking about.
It was a different category. It'll be one of the next categories about red zone offensive conversions is where you were completely lost, Justin, and Scott said something, and then you were really lost. So next one, it was rush touchdowns. We set the over-under at 20, which would have been 13 of the Big Ten this year and 80th in the country. The actual number was 9, 4th in the Big Ten, 10th in the NCAA, and tied with Penn State and Troy in the country for touchdowns given up on the ground. I would have never put Troy in that category, but I guess they had a defense in what is it, Sun Belt is what they play in. There we go. Tyler takes the lead with 5, and Derrick's got 4. Scott and I both have 1, and Justin is still big goose egg. Does it stay that way?
He's the most shocker. Thank God. The most wrong about everything.
Opponent red zone percentage. This is where Justin was confused. I'm not sure what confused him, but I think it was the pyramid.
I think whatever Scott was saying confused me. I had no idea what he was talking about. Play the tape.
Yeah, play the tape. Play the tape. Damn it. Go to the tape. So, 84.4% opposition red zone percentage. Basically, red zone conversions by our opponents is what this is based on. And that would have been 10th in the Big Ten, 80th in the NCAA in 2023. Nebraska actually gave up scores 81.58% of the time, which was 7th in the Big Ten, 54th in the country. Derrick got it. So we have a tie, gentlemen, between Derrick and Tyler. This is the last category. So I'm going to ask you a tiebreaker question between the two of you. Here it is. Sack differential. Nebraska's defense generated more sacks than Nebraska's offense surrendered. Is that number over under 4.5? And you need to give a number.
Oh, that's not fair. Stat Boy's going to win this one.
Yeah, he's probably got it up right now. So no cheating here, Derrick.
Yeah,
I'll let the elder statesman go first. Give him the advantage.
I'm not in this one.
It was under, and it was 4.
I was going to go with 4 also, so that's not fair. But I'll say 3 just to be different.
I believe it was 33-29.
It was. I looked it up, and it was 3. So Tyler,
really?
Yeah.
I would have went 3. I'm still 4. I'm so glad I let you go first.
31-28 or 32-29, something like that is what it ended up.
What Derrick really wants to know is who do you use to get your stats? That's what he wants to know.
CFBstats.com, baby. CFBstats.com.
It must have been 32-29 because I know for a fact we gave up 29 sacks this year.
Okay. Yeah, you're probably right. I think it was 32-29 is what it was. So good job, guys. Tyler, you win again. And I know I still owe you a gift card from the first time we did this 3 years ago. So I will figure out.
Hey, I won last year because I got the T-shirt to.
Yeah, you got the T-shirt. See, Justin got something. Hey, by the way, Justin got shut out for the first year in the over-under game. So congratulations, Justin.
That wasn't fair when Justin won because all Justin did was fade Scott Frost. That was his, and he was right, but that was his tactic back then. It was just no faith in anything. So.
Well, he sucked. I mean, I was the only one that could acknowledge that he was going to suck. You guys we'd bring him back for 1 more year, 10 more years.
Yeah, well, we don't need to rehash that argument. He's gone. He's playing golf here in Arizona somewhere today, I'm sure. Lucky bastard.
What a guy.
What a guy. I got one more real quick question. After we talked about the coaches earlier, staff makeup. Do you think Coach Rule's staff will look exactly as it is right now come game 1 in 2024?
No, I don't. I don't believe that this tight end coach is going to be here. I think he'll move Satterfield back to tight ends and hire a quarterbacks coach. I don't think there's going to be a lot of other shakeup than that, but I do think that will happen.
I agree.
I'm kind of in that same boat too, Derrick. I think you see a tight ends coach move back to the analyst role, and who that quarterback coach is, I don't know. I'm surprised that Jake Peets ended up saying no in the first place. I wonder if last year, if the part of it was he wanted to actually run the offense too. Gary Barnett would disagree with you in some ways, and I understand his argument that he thinks the offensive coordinator should be the quarterback's coach. simply because of having the hands-on approach with the quarterback as well as running the offense. So I understand that, but I just don't think Satterfield's the guy to coach quarterback. But anyway,
I'd say it's like
you were going to say something, Scott. Go ahead.
I'd say it's a coin flip. I would not be surprised if nothing changes, simply because I think that's what Matt Rule kind of wants from our culture, is to not just jump and do anything rash and make any like crazy decisions after year one, or at least what would be perceived as a crazy decision. I don't think it's a crazy decision to reallocate your offensive coordinator to tight ends coach and then hire out a strictly exclusive quarterbacks coach. That's not all that crazy, but I would not be surprised. I would actually probably lean more towards, if I had to bet on it, I would bet that nothing changes and we just go into year two with the same staff, and he kind of uses it as like a measuring stick. Like, there's no rush to this. We don't have to make anything go crazy out of nowhere. I mean, he's kind of alluded to that in his press conference where he got all fired up when the kind of suggestion that Satterfield is on a hot seat. He got real fired up about it and was like, I'm not gonna do the things that Nebraska's done in the past, or whatever he, kind of responded. I don't know any other way to put it, but I think things just stay the same. But I hope that model is gone after, where, yes, like you said, I think there needs to be at least a little shift and hire out a quarterbacks coach, but I don't know.
If there is a staff change, when do you think it'll happen? Like the day after the early signing period for recruiting?
That would be my guess, sometime in December. Yeah, mid-December. If a change happens. If it doesn't happen by then, I don't think it happens at all. That'd be my thinking. How about you, Tyler? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, what Derrick proposed, I think, is a valid thought. If you listen to Matt Rule's postseason press conference, he kind of alluded to the fact that, yes, Satterfield will be back as offensive coordinator. Him as quarterback coach wasn't the original design. So that's definitely on the board. I would say that probably any offensive assistant, probably doesn't feel great about their job at this point. I mean, there's probably not a great security. I would like, I guess, I don't know the answer. I don't know what will happen or not. I would say that I would like to run it back one more year. I think it would be nice one off season to get through continuity and just to see what the progress is. If you're not on the defensive staff, I think there's a lot of risk going into year two about your job security. But I if it was Tyler's decision, I'd run it back.
Anybody else?
I'd be perfectly okay just hitting the reset button on the offense and starting over with all new coaches.
I'd be okay with that too. But I'm sitting here thinking, like, if I were to get into Trev's mind of how he would want his athletic department or how he would want his football program to be, I really think it's a chess game, not checkers, at least in their philosophy. How that plays out is completely subjective to an individual. Like, I think that you make a lot of moves now, and you just cut it all out and just start from scratch. In some ways,
from scratch. So start from scratch again. I just don't see that being a good way to run things. I'd say Satterfield's seat's probably a little warm going into this season if he's retained as a quarterback's coach, especially. But I also don't see Trev being the type of person that's going to mess with what Rule wants to do. I just don't. I think, and Rule's one of those. He's got that old school mentality. Hey, we got to keep some sort of continuity. Change the language yet again. Yeah, I could see the offensive coordinator staying the same, but I certainly could also see a quarterback's coach being different. And I think that pretty much wraps us up for today, guys. I really appreciate you guys coming on. I appreciate all the time that you've spent hanging out with us over these last couple of years. This is, as you can see up in that top right corner, guys, this is episode 99. We're coming up on milestone episode 100. Scott and I are going to be taking a break until after the first of the year, but you guys are definitely going to be a part, if you're willing, of our 100th episode in January, we want to have you guys on. We want to have a bunch of other guests on, so we can have it up to 10 people on a stream at a time, which would be a lot like herding cats with the way we like to argue. So it could be fun. But I think that
under an
would
hour.
be the perfect opportunity. Yeah. Well, no, it just flipped to an hour. So thanks for jinxing it. But that would be the perfect opportunity to talk about the woes of the offense, like we talked about earlier, to sit down and just have a more overarching discussion about the move forward, Satterfield, no Satterfield, fire Sat, hold back on the hashtag, whatever you want to call it. But I think that would be a perfect opportunity to talk about that and talk about, the fortunes. We'll know what the recruiting class, a lot of what the recruiting class will look like by then with the early signing day. I just think it would be a blast to have you guys, see if we can get Go Big Redcast guys on, like Honky and maybe Husker Army, those guys that have hung out with us before. I think it'd be an absolute hoot. So if you guys are down for it, we'll make sure we make it happen.
Sounds good.
Congratulations on 100. That's awesome.
Hey, thanks. You guys are getting close to 300 yourselves. So for those who haven't had a chance to hear those 300 episodes, where can folks find your podcast?
You can find us anywhere you get your podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Husker Podcast. You can like us on Facebook. And we don't tweet a lot, but we're there.
Alrighty. And Scott, where can folks find you?
Yes, folks, you can follow me on Twitter at ScottGenRedPod. That's Scott with 2 T's. Second T is silent. You can follow me there for all sorts of updates and crazy news. And I do want to just say really quick, I have an announcement to make. Twitter will know about it sooner or later, but we're going to have another Husker fan.
Nice.
New generation of red. Thank you. And he's going to be a boy. So we're going to have a little boy. So yeah, I just wanted to let you boys know here on this podcast, celebrating 99 episodes of Generation Red. And there's about to be a whole new generation of hopefully a Husker fan. If I do my right, as a parent, to indoctrinate my kids in the ways that I see fit, I will definitely impose Husker fandom on this poor little child.
Awesome. Oh, the pain he's in for.
Yeah.
Yeah, he told we had Thanksgiving at our house, and Scott and Kelsey were there, and my daughter happened to FaceTime all of us right as we were going to go around the room and do kind of the what are you thankful for, kind of exercise. So then Scott and Kelsey, they were the last ones in the chain of going around the room, and Kelsey just simply held up an ultrasound photo. And
Yep. There's going to be. It has been. It's been a rough year and a half. That's for a whole nother episode. But yeah. No, we're really excited. His name's going to be Theodore. So we're going to throw back with some old school naming.
Theodore Carter.
No.
Theodore Michael. He'll have the same middle name as all the firstborn McCone children, starting with mine. So that's pretty cool.
Oh,
yep.
Continuing my brother's firstborn son's middle name was Michael as well. So it's kind of a thing our family does.
Yes. So that's really exciting. Here's hoping. This is what I'm thinking. So when my dad had me, right, lots of national championships happened in that short period of time. So I'm really hoping we get like 3 national championships in the span of 4 years after he's born. So that's how we're gonna go to a natty next year based on this trend. So just be ready for that.
That'd be a neat trick.
That sure would.
For my next
would. Anyway, you can follow myself and the show at GenRedPod on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Generation Red is the name of the podcast. If you want to listen to the audio show only, that'll be available sometime tomorrow morning. We drop all the audio from all of our streams right there on your favorite podcast apps. So make sure you're subscribed. Give us a like. Also, don't hesitate to give us a review if you listen to us on Google Podcasts or iTunes. Or you can just go to genredpod.com and you can leave a review for the show there on our website. All of our social media links are there as well, and you can listen to or watch any of our past shows right there on the website. So genredpod@gmail.com is our email address for any comments, suggestions on the show. We'd appreciate you reach out to us. We really appreciate all of you watching. We really appreciate all of you who are listening to this podcast after the fact. And thanks to you guys, Justin, Derrick, and Tyler. It's been way too long since we hung out on a stream together. This has been an absolute blast, and we love you guys. We love hanging out with you. So on behalf of the Husker Podcast, he's Scott, I'm Ken. Together we are Generation Red, and we are here to chronicle this Huskers' eventual return to greatness, one podcast at a time, because there's no place like Nebraska.
And Iowa's corn sucks, believe it or not, more than the college football playoff committee.
I don't know, man. That might be a tie there. Anyway, again, thanks so much. Yeah, thanks so
poll
much.
Question.
There you go. Poll question. Yeah, throw that poll out there, Scott, now that folks know where to find you.
Yes.
Thanks again, everybody. And go Big Red, right?
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red. See y'all next time, sometime in January.